There's a sound a bat makes when the swing is perfect. Not the crack, the thing before it. The silence in your hands. The half second where your jaw is loose and your hips fire in order, and a voice behind you, low and close, says, "There you go. That's what I want." And you realize, standing in a batting cage at 3 in the afternoon, that 2 words from this particular man are worth more than 41,000 people screaming your name. Tyler West is a rookie outfielder who just got called up to the majors and immediately fell apart. Logan Price is the 13-year veteran catcher who watched him do it, clocked every flinch, and offered to fix it. In the cage, in the hotel room, in a voice that rearranges architecture. Bench Me, Praise Me by Chase Power. Praise Kink. Age Gap, Baseball, Inferno Heat. Chapter 1.
Ty. The call came at 6:14 a.m., and Ty West answered it shirtless, one sock on, holding a protein shake he'd forgotten to drink. "Pack a bag," his AAA manager said. "You're going up. Flight's at 9. Ty stood in the middle of his apartment in Lehigh Valley, the one with the air mattress and the single fork, and waited for the punchline. It didn't come. "Up," he repeated. Up like the big club, West. "Hernandez hit the ill last night. They want you in center by first pitch. Don't miss the flight." Click. Ty looked at the protein shake. Looked at his one sock. Looked at the wall where he'd taped the lineup card from his first pro game 4 years ago, the paper gone soft and yellow at the corners. Then he sat down on the air mattress very carefully and made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh and wasn't quite anything else. 24 years of swinging at things, and it was finally happening. He called his parents from the airport. His mother cried. His father said, "Don't waste it," which was, by Roy West standards, practically a sonnet. "I won't," Ty said. "They send guys back down every day. You know that." "I know, Dad." "So produce. Day 1. Don't give 'em a reason." Ty pressed the phone harder against his ear, like that might wring something else out of it. "A good luck, son, and I'm proud of you already," but the well was the same depth it had always been. "Boarding," he lied, and hung up, and sat at the gate for another 40 minutes with his knee bouncing hard enough to annoy a stranger 2 seats over. The clubhouse smelled like eucalyptus and money. That was Ty's first dumb thought, walking in with his duffel over his shoulder and his heart going like a bullpen phone. The carpet was thick. The lockers were cherry wood. There was a guy whose entire job appeared to be arranging bats by weight, and a spread table with 3 kinds of salmon, and a nameplate, an actual engraved nameplate that read West 19. He stood in front of it too long. Long enough that somebody noticed. "You gonna marry it, or you gonna dress?" Ty turned. The voice belonged to a guy folding himself onto the bench 2 stalls down, big through the shoulders in a way that made his practice shirt look personally victimized, forearms like something off a butcher's diagram, jaw shadowed with stubble that had clearly never met a razor it respected. Mid-30s. Catcher's knees, Ty could tell by the way he sat down in stages like a drawbridge. Logan Price. Ty didn't need the nameplate. He'd grown up watching this man frame pitches on television. He had, at 14, copied Logan Price's batting stance for an entire summer, until his travel coach beat it out of him. "Sorry," Ty said. "First day." "I know." Price didn't look up from his glove, working oil into the pocket with 2 fingers, slow and methodical. "Hernandez's knee. You're the corresponding move." The corresponding move. 4 years of bus rides reduced to a transaction line. Ty laughed because the alternative was worse. "That's me." Price's eyes came up then. Pale, gray or green depending on the light, Ty couldn't decide, and they went over him once, top to bottom, with all the sentiment of a man reading a scouting report. Ty had been looked at plenty in his life. Coaches, scouts, girls in college bars, the occasional guy. He had never once felt as inventoried as he did in those 2 seconds. "Skip's got you 8th playing center," Price said, going back to the glove. "Vasquez is starting for them. He'll throw you sliders away until you prove you won't fish. So don't fish." "I don't fish. Everybody fishes their first week." He said it without heat, the way you'd say everybody pays taxes. "Try to keep it to a week." That was the whole conversation. Price got up, drawbridge in reverse, and walked off toward the training room, and Ty stood there holding his duffel and feeling like he'd just been simultaneously welcomed and weighed. He found out later from Webb, the first baseman, that this was Price being friendly. "He talked to you unprompted?" Webb whistled low. "Day one? Kid, he didn't learn my name till June. The anthem took 9 years." Ty stood on the line with his cap over his heart, and 41,000 people stacked up into the lights above him and thought very clearly, "Don't throw up, don't throw up. You grew up in a town smaller than Section 134, don't throw up." Then it was done, and the crowd was roaring at nothing, at everything, and he ran out to center field in a big league uniform with his name on the back, and for about 90 seconds, jogging across that impossible lawn, Tyler West was the happiest he had ever been in his life. The 90 seconds did not last. Vasquez threw him sliders away. The first at bat, Ty took 2 of them like a professional, got to 2-1, told himself fastball, he has to come in now, and Vasquez threw a 3rd slider, and Ty fished. Reached across the plate like a man grabbing for a falling drink, rolled it over, weak grounder, out by 1.5 miles. He ran it out hard because his father's voice lived in his hamstrings, and trotted back past the dugout with his face on fire. Price was catching that night. Of course he was. Price caught everything. And from the on-deck circle his second time up, Ty could see him back there behind the plate in his armor, vast and settled as a boulder, flicking signs, running the whole game off 2 fingers and a glare. The other team's hitters kept stepping out, annoyed. Price had that effect, Ty would learn. He made the batter's box feel like rented property. Second at bat, 5th inning. Slider away, slider away. Ty laid off both, heart pounding, 2-0, now he comes in, and Vasquez came in finally, a fastball at the knees, the pitch Ty had murdered at 3 different levels of the minors, the pitch he'd been built in a backyard to hit. He swung through it. Just missed it. Under it by 1/4 inch, the kind of miss that doesn't exist in AAA, and is the entire conversation in the majors. Then he was 2-1 and pressing, and you know how that one ends. Slider. Fish. Strike 3 swinging at something that bounced. 41,000 people made a sound like the air going out of something. The third thing, the thing that would play in his head on a loop until roughly 4 a.m., happened in the 7th. Runner on second, 1 out, a lefty up who sliced a soft liner out toward center, the kind of in-between hop ball Ty had eaten alive his whole career. And maybe it was the lights which were brighter than AAA lights, or the white shirts in the batter's eye, or the simple fact that his brain had spent 6 innings screaming, but he broke back when he should have broken in. 1 step. 1 single wrong step, and the ball died on the grass in front of him, and the runner scored standing up, and the scoreboard said error, and then mercifully corrected itself to a hit that everyone in the park knew should have been caught. Ty stood out there in the vast green nothing with his hands on his hips, and understood fully in his body what it meant to want to disappear in front of 41,000 witnesses. When the inning ended, he ran in past the mound and made the mistake of looking at the plate. Price had his mask shoved up on top of his head, sweat cutting lines through the dirt on his jaw, and he was looking back at Ty with those pale eyes, not angry, which would have been survivable. Assessing. Reading him like a scouting report again, and this time writing things down. They lost 4-2. The run Ty let score was the difference, or close enough that the math didn't comfort anybody. The clubhouse, after a loss, was a library with better lighting. Guys ate in silence, showered in silence, dressed in silence. Ty sat at his beautiful cherrywood stall in front of his engraved nameplate and stared at his spikes and ran the liner back for the 40th time. Break in, glove low, routine, and didn't realize he was doing the thing with his thumbnail, digging it into the pad of his finger until it hurt. His phone buzzed. His mother, a heart a baseball, so proud you're there. It buzzed again. His father, tough one. Tomorrow's stats start fresh. Ty read it 3 times. There was a version of that text that was comfort. Roy West had not sent that version. Tomorrow's stats. The ledger was already open. The ledger was always open. Ty had been born into the ledger, had learned to read off the back of it. Hit .400, and you got steak, and his father telling the neighbors. Go 0 for 3, and dinner was quiet, and the drive home was film study. Produce. Don't give him a reason. He was so deep in it that he didn't hear the footsteps, just felt the air change, a big body slowing as it passed behind him, the smell of soap and icy hot. Ty braced for nothing, for a pat on the shoulder, for the standard veteran issue we've all been there, kid. What he got, in a voice pitched low enough that it belonged to him alone, was, "You press like that, you'll never see a fastball." Ty's head came up. Logan Price stood there in a half-zipped hoodie with his bag over his shoulder, looking down at him with that unhurried, unblinking attention, like Ty was a pitch sequence he was deciding how to call. "Excuse me?" "7th inning. You broke back on a ball you've caught 10,000 times." Price's voice never rose. It didn't need to, it was built like the rest of him, low and load-bearing. "That wasn't your legs. Your legs are fine. I watched you run a 4.1 down the line on a rollover ground out, nobody's beating out, in a 4-run game. That's not a guy who's slow." He shifted his bag. "That's a guy who's scared." The word went into Ty like a thumb into a bruise. He opened his mouth to say something. "I'm not scared, it was the lights, I had it and lost it, and what came out instead, God help him, was nothing at all." Because Price was right, and they both knew it, and lying to those particular eyes felt like a worse idea than silence. Price watched him not answer. Something moved at the corner of his mouth, not a smile, more like the geological precursor to one. "Vasquez threw you 9 pitches tonight," he said. 7 sliders. You fished at 3. You know what he threw the last guy who laid off that pitch for a full series?" Ty shook his head. "Fastballs. Middle." Price turned to go, then paused and delivered the rest over his shoulder, almost bored, like he was reading a grocery list. "You've got the swing. I watched the tape from Lehigh before you got here. The swing's not your problem. Your problem is you walk up there like you're asking permission." And he left. Just like that, out the double doors, drawbridge gate and all, leaving Ty sitting at his stall with his heart doing something complicated and his skin feeling 2 sizes too small. "I watched the tape from Lehigh before you got here." Logan Price, 13-year veteran, 4-time All-Star, the man whose stance Ty had stolen at 14, had watched his tape. Had clocked his sprint speed on a meaningless groundout. Had counted the sliders. It should have felt like surveillance. It felt, and Ty would not be examining this feeling tonight, thank you, he had enough problems, it felt like being seen. Like someone had finally bothered to read the whole report instead of the stat line. Nobody in 24 years had ever once looked at Tyler West and separated the swing from the scared. His own father had never managed it. 3 sentences of brutal honesty from a stranger, and Ty's chest was doing the thing it did when a coach he respected said attaboy. Worse than that thing. A hotter, lower cousin of that thing. "Get a grip," he muttered to his spikes, and went to shower. He didn't sleep, obviously. The hotel the team had him in, until he found a place was nicer than anywhere he'd ever lived, and he lay in the middle of an acre of mattress at 2 a.m., watching the liner die on the grass over and over on the backs of his eyelids. Break in. Glove low. Routine. He got up at one point and stood in front of the mirror and took his stance, checked his load, his hands, like the answer was hiding somewhere in the reflection. You walk up there like you're asking permission. He dropped his hands. Stared at himself. His phone said 2:47 when he finally put it on the nightstand, and the last thing he looked at, he'd deny this under oath, was a highlight someone had posted years ago. Price blocking a 58-footer with a man on third, 9th inning, then throwing behind the runner to end the game. The comments were all some version of the same joke. Imagine being dumb enough to test this man. Imagine, Ty thought, being good enough that he says your name. He fell asleep on that thought and dreamed, mortifyingly, about batting practice. He was the first one in the clubhouse the next afternoon. He'd planned it that way: get in early, get treatment, watch tape, show whoever was keeping the ledger that the kid worked. He had his routine all mapped: cage at 2:30, early outfield work at 3:15, be the most prepared man in the building. The lineup card was already posted on the corkboard by the food spread, printed in Skip's blocky font. Ty read it top to bottom. Then again, slower, the way you reread a text that's bad news, hoping the words rearrange. Decker, the other rookie, the second rounder with the gel in his hair and the .302 average, the one who'd shaken Ty's hand yesterday like he was taking his coat, was in center, batting 7th. Ty read the card a third time, all the way down through the pitcher's spot, as if maybe they'd invented a 10th position overnight and stashed him there. His name wasn't on it. One game. One night in the major leagues, and he was already on the bench. Behind him, the clubhouse doors swung open, and he heard the unhurried, uneven footsteps of a catcher's knees coming up the carpet, and he had exactly 4 seconds to decide what his face was going to do. Chapter 2. Ty. He decided his face was going to do professional. "Morning," Ty said to the room in general, peeling away from the lineup card like it was just a thing on a wall and not a public execution of his name. He went to his stall. He unpacked his bag. He did all of it with his spine straight, because somewhere behind him Logan Price was crossing the clubhouse on those drawbridge knees, and Ty would have rather eaten his own batting gloves than let the man see him flinch twice in 12 hours. "West." Skip's voice from the office doorway. "Got a second?" The manager's office smelled like coffee and Tiger Balm. Skip didn't sit, so Ty didn't either. "You saw the card?" "Yes, sir." "It's one game. You're not in the doghouse, you're in the league. There's a difference, even when it feels the same." Skip scratched his jaw. "Vasquez chewed you up. Tonight's guy is worse for your swing. I'm not feeding you to 2 lefties in a row in your first week, I'm letting you breathe. So tonight you sit, you watch, and you learn something." A pause, and then, like it was an afterthought and absolutely was not, sit next to Price. "He's resting. He likes to talk during games, and God doesn't hand out that kind of tuition for free." "He likes to talk during games" was not a sentence anyone who'd met Logan Price would construct on their own. Ty filed that away. "Yes, sir." "And West?" Skip finally looked up, and his face did something almost kind. "Everybody's first week is a car accident. Mine was in 1989, and I still dream about it. Go eat something." Decker found him at the spread, naturally. Decker had a sense for it, Ty was learning, some dorsal fin instinct for blood in the water. "Heard you're getting the Price seminar tonight." Decker built a plate like a man who'd never once been benched, piled, confident, careless. Up close he was all white teeth and product, handsome the way a real estate sign is handsome. "Lucky. He didn't say 4 words to me in spring training." "Maybe you didn't fish enough," Ty said. Decker laughed, delighted, and pointed a fork at him. "Funny. You're funny. That'll be good for the bench. Keep the guys loose while I'm running down balls in your center field." He said it light, all banter, grin wide enough to plausibly deny everything underneath it. "No offense." "None taken," Ty said, and meant it about as much as Decker did. "The thing nobody tells you about the bench is that the game is louder there." In center field the sound came at Ty as weather, a wall of crowd far away. In the dugout, it was specific. Spikes on concrete. The bullpen phone. Skip's sunflower seeds. The home plate ump's strike call, a short bark close enough to touch. And Logan Price, settling onto the bench rail beside him in the top of the first, like a building deciding to sit down. He didn't say hello. He said, "What's the first pitch?" Ty blinked. "What?" "Romero's up there for them. Big league at-bat number 1 for the kid hitting leadoff for us." "What's Romero throw him pitch 1? Price's eyes never left the field. He had a paper cup of coffee that looked doll-sized in his hand. You're in the big leagues, West. There's a quiz. Ty looked out at Romero, tall righty, low slot, the scouting report he'd skimmed on the plane swimming up at him in fragments. Sinker? Asking or telling? Sinker. Romero threw a sinker. The leadoff man rolled it to short, exactly like he was supposed to, and Price made a low sound that wasn't praise and wasn't disgust. Sinker, he agreed. Now tell me why. And that was the night. That was the whole night. Inning by inning, Price took the game apart in front of him like a man field stripping a rifle, every piece laid out, named, wiped down, put back. He talked through pitch sequences before they happened, and grunted when he was right, which was a frankly disturbing percentage of the time. He pointed out the shortstop cheating 2 steps on a 2-2 count, the third base coach's live sign, buried in a string of dummy touches, the way their cleanup hitter's back foot opened a half-inch early on anything hard inside. Watch it, watch his heel, there, that man will not touch a good fastball in tonight, and their catcher hasn't figured it out yet, which is why we're gonna win. He talked the way other men breathed, low, constant, economical, and at some point in the 4th inning Ty realized he had stopped watching the game entirely and was just watching it through Price. The field had reorganized itself. What had been 27 outs of chaos his whole life was, from this seat beside this man, a legible thing. A language. Price spoke it natively and was, for reasons Ty could not begin to work out, translating. Why are you telling me all this? Ty asked in the 5th before he could stop himself. Price turned his head just slightly. Up close his eyes were definitively gray, with a strange pale ring around them, and they were not warm exactly. But they were entirely, unnervingly on him. The whole searchlight of the man's attention swung around and parked. 12 hours ago, Ty had thought being inventoried by this man was uncomfortable. It turned out being inventoried was nothing. Being studied was the thing. Because Hernandez is 33 with a knee full of gravel, Price said. And you're the corresponding move. He looked back at the field. And because you listen. You'd be amazed how rare that is. I've been giving this seminar for 13 years, most guys nod and go back to their phones. A beat? You haven't checked yours since the anthem. Ty hadn't even noticed. His phone was in his jacket in the tunnel, and it had not once occurred to him to want it. There was something heating up under his sternum at you listen, and he chose again not to examine it, which was getting to be a full-time job. Quiz, Price said. 2 outs, man on first. Our pitcher's thrown 16 straight fastballs to lefties. Their guy up there knows that. What do I call? 17, Ty said. He's looking off speed now because he thinks you think it's time to flip. Price was silent for a second. On the field, their catcher called fastball. The hitter, sitting soft, watched it go by like it was someone else's mail. Strike 3. Inning over. Ha, Price said. Just that. And then as the team came jogging in around them, quieter, almost to himself, maybe you're not a total project. It should not have landed the way it landed. It was barely a compliment. It was a compliment with a double negative load-bearing in the middle of it. But Price's voice had dropped to that register that seemed to be for Ty alone, and Ty's whole body lit up like a stadium, every light bank at once, boom, 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 and he had to look hard at the bat rack and think about his grandmother's church until his pulse came down. It's been one day, he told himself. You cannot be like this. In the 7th, the thing happened. Their starter hung a breaking ball, the other team's 3-hitter put it in the second deck, and the dugout went flat and sour the way dugouts do. Ty, on reflex, 4 years of minor league benches, of performing engagement for coaches who were always watching, popped up to the rail and clapped and chirped encouragement out at the field. Come on, kid, shake it off, next pitch, and felt more than saw Price's eyes come over to him. Sit down, Price said, not unkindly. Ty sat. Who was that for? What? The cheerleading. Price spat a sunflower shell into his cup with surgical precision. Garrett's 60 feet away with a crowd screaming, he can't hear you. Skip's not grading hustle points off the bench. So who was the show for? Ty opened his mouth. Closed it. The honest answer was so automatic and so old that he'd never once stood outside it before this exact moment, for whoever's keeping the ledger. There's always a ledger. If you can't produce, perform. If you can't perform, at least look like the right kind of guy. You flinch, Price said, into his silence. He said it the way he'd said sinker. A read. A fact. Every time something happens in this park, your first move is to check whose face you need to fix it on. You did it last night after the liner, looked at me before you looked at the ball. You did it this morning, at the lineup card. You're doing it right now. He turned that gray searchlight on Ty full beam, and his voice went down to the private register, and it was not soft, but it was direct, aimed, a fastball, middle, knock it off. You're not here by accident. 40 guys in that draft room watched your tape and picked you, and a front office that doesn't gamble called you up, and I've watched 11 center fielders come through this organization, and your first step, when your head's not in the way, is better than 9 of them. Nobody up here needs the show. Stop flinching and just be what you already are. Ty stared at him. There was a roaring in his ears that had nothing to do with the crowd. Somewhere very far away, the game was continuing. He was aware distantly of his own heartbeat in his throat, in his wrists, lower, aware that his face was doing something undignified, aware that no one, not a coach, not a scout, not his father, not one single adult male in 24 years of organized baseball, had ever said anything like that to him in anything like that voice. You're not here by accident. 6 words. The man had thrown him 6 words underhand, like it was nothing, like it cost nothing, and Ty wanted. He didn't have a noun for what he wanted. That was the alarming part. It was a want with no object yet, huge and shapeless, and Logan Price was standing directly in front of it. Okay, Ty managed. Okay, Price said, and went back to the game like he hadn't just rewired a man on a Tuesday. They won 5-3. The fastball red in the 6th held up. Their cleanup hitter went 0 for 4, heel flying open, exactly as advertised. Decker went 1 for 3 in center with a stolen base, and made sure to touch every hand in the dugout twice. Logan Price had a routine for rest days, refined over 13 years. Ice the knees, chart the opposing pitcher, talk to no one who didn't ask a good question. The kid had asked 11 good questions. Logan had counted, because counting was what he did. He sat in the cold tub after the game with his arms along the rim, and the water gnawing at the gravel in his joints, and ran the night back the way he ran back innings. The quiz answers faster every time. The fastball call in the 6th, 17, he's looking off speed now, which had genuinely surprised him, and Logan had stopped being surprised by rookies sometime around 2019. The phone untouched. The way the kid leaned in when you corrected him, actually leaned, the whole body tilting toward the instruction like a plant doing something shameless toward a window. And the other thing. The thing Logan was being careful with. He'd seen it last night, a flicker when he told the kid his swing wasn't the problem, a reaction out of proportion, something hungry surfacing for half a second before West shoved it back under. Tonight he'd tested it. Maybe you're not a total project, a nothing line, 6 cents of approval, and the kid had lit up like a pinball machine and then tried to hide it badly by staring at the bat rack with his ears going red. So Logan had said the rest. The "you're not here by accident" speech. He told himself, sitting in the ice, that it had been instructional. Strategic. Skip had as good as assigned him the kid, a center fielder playing scared cost runs, you fix the head, you fix the first step. 13 years of handling pitchers had taught him exactly where to put his thumb on a man's psychology, and West's wiring might as well have come with a diagram. Somebody had spent 2 decades teaching that kid that he was only as lovable as his last box score. You didn't need to be a genius. You just needed to watch him read a text from his father and then not eat. Instructional. Strategic. Except Logan kept catching himself rerunning the moment for the wrong frame, not the part where the message landed but the part just after. The way West had gone still and looked at him with those enormous brown eyes blown half black, lips parted, breathing like he'd scored from first. The way the kid's whole considerable body had oriented on him, helpless as a compass needle. Nobody had looked at Logan Price like that in a long time. Men had looked at him with want, sure, in certain bars in certain cities, carefully, once or twice very carefully, in this clubhouse's showers across the years. Want was manageable. Want was Tuesday. This wasn't that. Or it wasn't only that, which was worse. The kid looked at him like his voice was a controlled substance. "You're old," Logan told the cold tub, "and he's a baby and you have a job." The cold tub, as usual, had no notes. His knees throbbed in a new spot, which at 35 was just information, the body filing its quarterly report. Down the hall he could hear the kid, still here, an hour after a game he hadn't played in, hitting off a tee in the cage, the thunk of it steady as a metronome. Doing his homework. Pressing probably, even alone, even now, swinging like somebody was grading it. Somebody was, Logan supposed. He climbed out of the tub in stages, toweled off, and stood for a minute listening to the metronome. Thock. 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 Slightly quick. Front side flying, he'd bet money, jumping at it, trying to make something happen instead of letting it. It was nothing to him. Rest day was over. Tomorrow he had Garrett's fastball command to worry about, and a kid catcher in Double-A having the kind of season that made front offices sentimental about youth. He had 6 months of season left in 2 knees, with maybe a year of cartilage between them. The last thing, the absolute last thing, Logan Price needed was a project with brown eyes and a praise reflex you could play like a slot machine. "Show up at 3 tomorrow," he composed anyway, standing in the hallway in a towel like an idiot. Cage. Bring the swing, leave the audience. He didn't have the kid's number. Small mercies. He'd just tell him in person. Ty. Ty hit off the tee until his hands hurt, alone in the cage under the stadium, because the hotel room had nothing in it but the loop of the lineup card without his name. "You're not here by accident." Thock. Stop flinching. Thock. Maybe you're not a total project. He set another ball on the tee, and stood there a second, breathing, grip loose, and heard it again in that low private register that the man seemed to keep in a holster just for him, and felt the heat of it roll down his spine and pool somewhere that had no business being involved in baseball whatsoever. "You've got a problem," Ty informed the empty cage. Thock. He'd worry about it tomorrow. Chapter 3. Ty. Cage. 3 o'clock. Price said it in passing the next afternoon, not even slowing down, bag over his shoulder like he was reading off a weather report. "Show up or keep embarrassing yourself." Then he was gone down the tunnel, and Ty stood holding a half-eaten banana, with his heart rate doing something that the team's sports scientists would have flagged. It was 12:40. Ty spent the next 2 hours and 20 minutes being extremely normal. He ate normally. He stretched normally. He watched 2 innings of last night's game in the video room, retaining nothing normally. At 2:51 he walked down to the cage under the stands at a normal pace, and if he'd changed his shirt twice for batting practice with a 35-year-old man, that was between him and his locker. The cage at 3 p.m. on a game day was a dead zone, everybody upstairs in the trainer's room or face down in the player's lounge. The fluorescent lights hummed. The machine sat unplugged. Logan Price was already there, in shorts and a worn team tee with the sleeves shoved up his forearms, dragging a bucket of balls toward the plate with one foot, and Ty's brain helpfully informed him that the man's thighs were wider than Ty's torso, which was not useful information for hitting. "You're early," Price said. "You said 3. "It's 2:54. He tipped the bucket. "Early's correct. Grab your bat." There was no small talk. Ty was learning there was never going to be small talk. Conversation with Price was like at bats with a strike thrower. You got what you got, and it was always over the plate. He flipped soft toss for 10 swings without a word watching, that gray searchlight tracking Ty's hands, his hips, his feet, and Ty felt every individual swing being graded, and tried not to let that knowledge climb into his shoulders. It climbed into his shoulders. "Stop." Price stood up off his bucket. "There it is. You know what you do. Fly open. Before that. Upstream." He came around the L screen and the cage, a perfectly normal regulation-sized cage, got small. Your hands are fine. Your hips are fine. The problem starts in your jaw and runs down. He stopped an arm's length away. You clench up 2 seconds before the toss. Every time. You brace like the ball's a verdict. A beat? May I? Ty did not trust his voice, so he nodded. What happened next was technically coaching. Ty would review the film in his head approximately 900 times over the following days, and at no point did anything occur that couldn't have run on a teaching tape. That was the insane part. That was the part that took him apart. Price stepped in behind him and put his hands on him like Ty was equipment, one big palm flat against his stomach, the other closing around his back wrist, and moved him. Load, he said low, right at his ear, and drew Ty's hands back himself slow, setting them where he wanted them. The hand on Ty's stomach pressed, a steady plate of heat through damp cotton. Feel that? That's where you start from. Not your shoulders. Here. Press. Breathe into my hand. Ty breathed into his hand. Again. He breathed again. Price's chest was almost against his back, not touching, but the heat of him was, the bulk of him a wall of warmth a half-inch off Ty's spine, and his voice was coming from directly behind Ty's ear in that holstered register, and Ty had never in his life been so aware of the architecture of another human being. Now turn. The hand left his wrist and clamped onto his hip, actually gripped him, fingers and thumb, manhandling Ty's pelvis through the rotation at quarter speed like he weighed nothing. From here. The hands are passengers. You've been driving with the passengers. He ran Ty through it again and again, turning him by the hips each time, adjusting the angle of him in 2-degree increments with total unembarrassed authority, talking the whole time. There, feel that, that's connected, that. S1 piece. And Ty stared at the netting, and recited the infield fly rule to himself and prayed to every god in the rulebook, because his body had received the executive summary of this experience, and the executive summary was, a huge man with a low voice is gripping your hips and telling you exactly what to do, and you are doing it, and he is pleased. Okay. Price stepped back. The air where he'd been went cold. Now hit. Ty hit. The first swing felt strange, loose, late starting, almost lazy. The ball came off the bat like a gunshot. Again. Crack. The net jumped. Again. Crack. Better. He could feel it now, the thing Price had installed with his hands, the swing starting low and inside his own body instead of up in his clenched jaw, the whole chain firing in order, easy, easy, the way it had felt when he was 19 and nothing was a verdict yet. There you go, Price said. Crack. That's it. Stay there. Crack. Ty was sweating through his second shirt of the day, breathing hard, locked in, and Price kept feeding him tosses and feeding him that voice, good again, don't think, just like that, each one dropping into Ty's bloodstream like something prescription grade, and somewhere around the 40th swing the line between locked in and lit up stopped existing. His whole body was one circuit. The toss came in, his hips fired, the contact was so pure it was nearly silent, the ball screaming off into the top of the net. And Ty groaned. Out loud. Low and unguarded from the chest, the kind of sound that has never once in human history been about baseball. The cage went very quiet. The hum of the fluorescence. The ball rolling to a stop against the netting. Ty stood frozen in his finish, bat still wrapped behind his shoulder, watching his entire career flash before his eyes, and behind him he heard Price rise off the bucket. Unhurried. 1 footstep. 2. Do that again, Price said. Ty's brain returned a blank screen. The swing? The swing. A beat, exactly long enough to be deliberate. Sure. A ball hit the toss arc. Pure instinct carried Ty through it, load, turn, crack, and it was a good swing, a clean swing, and the sound he made on it this time was half exertion and half pure helpless reflex because Price had moved closer. He could feel him there, just behind his shoulder, watching him at point-blank range. There it is. The voice had dropped further, into some register Ty hadn't been issued yet, gravel and warmth almost against his ear. That's what I want. Ty was hard. There was no managing it, no church thoughts root out of it. He was achingly, conspicuously hard in his shorts in a batting cage at 3 in the afternoon, pulse slamming, skin roaring, and the worst part, the part he'd be living inside for days, was that he knew Price could see it. The man read pitcher's grips from 60 feet. He missed nothing. And Ty stood there with his chest heaving and let himself be read one more time, top to bottom, the searchlight traveling down him slow and coming back up to his face, and what Ty saw in those gray eyes was not surprise. It was confirmation. A man checking math he'd already done. Price held his gaze for 3 full seconds, a geological era, and something flickered at the corner of his mouth, that pre-smile, that tectonic almost. Then he bent down, picked up the bucket and turned for the door. "Same time tomorrow," he said, completely level, like nothing in the universe had occurred. "Bring the swing, leave the audience." The door clanked shut behind him. His uneven footsteps faded down the concrete. Ty stood alone in the humming cage for a long moment. Then he sat down on the overturned bucket, dropped his head into his hands, and said with great sincerity to no one, "Oh no! Logan." Logan made it around 2 corners and most of a hallway before he stopped, set the bucket down, and leaned against the cinder block with his arms crossed, staring at a fire extinguisher like it owed him money. "So? Confirmed?" Not that it had needed much confirming after last night, but there was knowing a thing the way you know a hitter's cold zone, and then there was hearing it, that sound, that low, wrecked open groan 2 feet from his hands, the sound of something coming uncorked that had been pressurized for years. Logan had caught 13 seasons of professional baseball. He had heard every noise the male body produced under strain. That had not been strain. And then the kid had turned around, eventually, by degrees, and just stood there, flushed to the collarbones, pupils blown, blatantly hard and too far gone to hide it, looking at Logan with those brown eyes like he was waiting to be told what happened next. Not bracing. Not panicking. Waiting. Hands loose at his sides. The most coachable man Logan had ever touched, standing at attention in every available sense, ready for the next instruction. Logan had wanted, with a specificity that startled him, to give it to him. He'd had the sentence loaded. He could feel the exact shape of it, the weight of it leaving on his voice, and he could see, with the terrible clarity of a man who reads bodies for a living, exactly what it would do when it landed. The kid would have gone to his knees on a word. On a syllable. Right there on the cage turf with the fluorescence humming, grateful about it. Instead, Logan had picked up a bucket of baseballs like a coward and walked. "Smart," he told the fire extinguisher. That was the smart play. The fire extinguisher seemed unconvinced. Because here was the problem, the actual problem, the one he turned over now with the same care he gave a pitcher's mechanics. It wasn't the want. Want he could root around. He'd been routing around want in clubhouses since the kid in that cage was in middle school, and there was a thought that needed a cold tub all its own. The problem was that the coaching worked. The hands-on stuff, the voice, the 2-cent praise rationed at the exact right moments, the kid's swing had reorganized itself in 40 minutes. Logan had fixed in one afternoon what some hitting coordinator had failed to fix in 4 years, and he'd done it with the same toolkit that was currently leaving Tyler West sitting on a bucket in a state. The fix and the fuse were the same wire. There was no version where Logan kept developing this kid, and the team needed this kid developed. He needed this kid in center going first step quick into September. That didn't involve standing close and talking low and saying good at load-bearing moments. He could pretend the current running under it would just politely ground itself out. He'd watched a lot of guys pretend a hamstring was fine too. Upstairs, the building was waking up around batting practice. Logan picked the bucket back up. His knees registered their objection. He overruled them the way he did 40 times a day, and walked on toward the trainer's room, doing the thing he did best in the world, the thing 13 years had built him into. Calling the next pitch, knowing exactly where it was going to land, and getting his body in front of it anyway. "Same time tomorrow," he'd said. He was already counting the hours, and that, more than the kid, more than the sound, more than anything that had happened in that cage, was the part that should have scared him. It didn't. That was the part that did. Chapter 4. Ty. His name was back on the card. Ty saw it at 115 West, CF8, and made himself walk past it like it was ordinary, like his pulse hadn't spiked into sprint range at a piece of paper. Decker saw it too. Decker's congratulations had the shelf life of a banana in August. Big night, Rook. Righty on the mound and everything. Training wheels on. Appreciate you keeping the grass warm, Ty said, and went to get taped. 3 o'clock came and went without a cage session. Game day, full squad, no privacy, and Price hadn't said a word to him beyond a nod across the clubhouse that lasted a quarter second and recalibrated Ty's entire nervous system anyway. That was the new math of his life. A nod. A quarter second. He'd lain awake half the night replaying a batting cage like it was footage of a crime he'd committed, do that again on a loop in that gravel register, and now a nod across a carpeted room could put his heart in his throat. He didn't know what they were doing. He knew Price knew everything, had seen everything, had looked straight at the state of him and said same time tomorrow like a man penciling in a dentist appointment. The not knowing should have wrecked his focus. Instead, for the first time in a week, his head was quiet. Because here was the thing he'd figured out somewhere around 2 a.m., staring at a hotel ceiling. The want had an object now. All that shapeless roaring need that had been driving his swing into the dirt, prove it, produce, earn it, to whom for what, had narrowed to a single point 60 feet behind home plate, and somehow that made it lighter. He wasn't playing for 41,000 people tonight. He wasn't playing for the ledger. He was playing for one set of gray eyes behind a mask, and that audience he could find. That audience watched him anyway. Top of the fourth, runner on second, Ty came up with the crowd doing its low expectant churn. The pitcher started him slider away, of course, and Ty watched it go by with his hips quiet and his jaw loose. The hands are passengers. Slider away again, ball two, and Ty stepped out, breathed into the memory of a palm flat on his stomach, stepped back in. Fastball, middle in. The one his father built him to hit. The swing started low and inside his own body and arrived all at once, one piece, almost easy, and the ball left on a line into the right center gap and did not come down until it had scattered two outfielders and put Ty on second base, standing, heart going like a drumline, the runs scoring ahead of him. The dugout was on the rail. The crowd was a wall of sound. Ty looked at none of it. He looked at home plate, where Logan Price stood masked and armored in foul territory, backing up the throw, and watched the man point two fingers at him, tap them once against his own chest protector and turn away. Right here. That's all. Ty stood on second base in front of 41,000 people, grinning like an idiot, on fire from the inside. The catch came in the eighth. 1-run game by then, runner on first, and their three-hitter dropped the barrel on a fastball and sent it screaming into the left center gap, a sure double, a tying run in scoring position, except Ty had broken on contact, no thought, no verdict, first step quick the way the scouting report swore he was, and the ball and the grass and his body all arrived at the same place at the same time. He left his feet. The world went sideways. The ball hit the pocket of his glove a half-inch off the lawn and stuck. The sound the stadium made was the best thing that had ever happened to him, and it was not close to the best thing that happened to him that night. They won 3-2. The clubhouse afterward was loud and loose, music going, Webb narrating Ty's catch to anyone trapped within range. The boy levitated, I'm telling you, ask the laws of physics. They're still filing the police report, and Ty floated through it with a plate of food he didn't eat and a buzzing under his skin that food wasn't going to fix. Price wasn't at his stall. Price had gone for treatment, somebody said. Knees. The room emptied by degrees, the way clubhouses do, guys in 2s and 3s, car keys, cologne. Decker left loudly. Webb left last, pointing two fingers at Ty on his way out. Sleep, Rook. You're allowed to be good again, tomorrow. Ty did not sleep. Ty took the long way out through the back hallway past the video room, because the long way went by the tape room, and the light in the tape room was on. He'd lie to himself about that later, a little for form's sake. He wasn't fooling anybody. He hadn't been fooling anybody since the cage. Price was alone in there, sitting on the edge of the training table, in track pants and a half-zipped hoodie over bare skin, an ice wrap on one knee, working it loose. He looked up when Ty filled the doorway and went still, and the room, a perfectly normal, regulation-sized room, got small. "Good game," Price said. "Thanks." "That catch." He pulled the wrap free, set it aside, unhurried. "You broke on contact." "No flinch." "No flinch," Ty agreed. His voice came out lower than he'd planned. Price stood up off the table, in stages, knees first and then all of him, and crossed the space between them with that uneven, deliberate gait, and stopped inside Ty's air. Close enough that Ty could see the sweat-damp curl at his temple, the gray of his eyes gone dark at the rim. Neither of them said anything. Somewhere down the hall a door clanked, and the building went quiet around them, settling, emptied out. "Knew you had it in you," Price said. It went through Ty like current. And then Price's hand came up, slow, telegraphed an offer as much as an act, and closed gently along his jaw, thumb resting against the leap of his pulse, and tipped Ty's face up the necessary half-inch, and just held him there, reading him one last time at point-blank range, searchlight on full. "Tell me to go ice my knees," Price said quietly, and this never happened. Ty kissed him. He broke first, of course he broke first. He'd been breaking toward this since a voice behind a mask told him he was scared, closing the half-inch with his whole body, and Logan met him like a man catching something he'd called for. There was nothing tentative about it, after the first second. Logan's hand slid from his jaw into his hair and gripped. The other arm wrapped his waist, and he turned them and put Ty's back against the lockers with a controlled thud that knocked the breath out of him in the best way, pinning him there with all that catcher's bulk, kissing him slow and deep and absolutely in charge of it. Ty made the sound again. The cage sound. He couldn't help it. It came up out of the center of him, and he felt Logan's smile against his mouth. "There it is," Logan murmured and kissed him again. And what happened after that, against the lockers in the empty tape room, Ty experienced in fragments he'd be reassembling for the rest of the season, Logan's hands, sure and unhurried, undoing him. Logan sinking down onto those wrecked knees in front of him, deliberate, eyes up, because you earned it, and the low constant stream of that voice between everything, "Look at you, took the inside pitch like I taught you, taking this just as well, that, it, good," and the word, the one that finished him, delivered like a verdict at last in his favor. "Good boy." Ty came apart with his fist pressed against his own mouth, and Logan's name escaping around it anyway, knees buckling, held up by one broad forearm barred across his hips, wrung out and remade against a wall of cherrywood lockers, and the last coherent thought he had was that 24 years of chasing a ledger had just been settled in full by 2 words in a gravel voice. After, when Ty had returned him the favor with an enthusiasm that made up for inexperience, kneeling on a folded towel, Logan had nudged under him without breaking stride. "Patient, easy, there you go, you take instructions so well." They ended up side by side against the lockers on the floor, shoulders touching, breathing wrecked, staring at the opposite wall like 2 men who'd survived something. "So," Ty said when he had a voice. "Same time tomorrow." Logan huffed, almost a laugh, the most expensive sound in his inventory, and turned his head and looked at him for a long moment with something behind the gray that Ty couldn't name yet. "This stays in this room," he said. "And we're gonna talk rules. Tomorrow. Diner on 5th, after the game, 1 a.m. Nobody's there but cops and insomniacs." "Rules," Ty repeated. "Rules." Logan got to his feet in stages and held a hand down. Ty took it and got hauled up like he weighed nothing, which did things to him that should have been illegal so soon after the previous things. Logan held the grip 1 beat longer than the haul required, thumb pressed once against the inside of Ty's wrist, right over the pulse. "Hell of a catch, kid," he said. "Don't call me kid," Ty said. "When we're—" Logan raised an eyebrow. Waited. "You know what?" And there it was, the smile. The full tectonic event, brief and devastating, the first one Ty had ever seen on him, and it was aimed entirely at him. "Tomorrow," Logan said. 1 a.m. Don't be early. He was early. Chapter 5. Logan. The Starlight Diner on 5th had been serving Logan Price black coffee and burnt toast at 1 a.m. for 9 seasons, and in 9 seasons the waitress, Doreen, 70 if she was a day, immune to baseball, had never once asked him a question more personal than white or wheat. It was, in other words, the most secure facility in the city. Logan got there at 12:40 and took the back booth, the one with sightlines on the door, because 13 years of calling games had left him constitutionally incapable of sitting anywhere he couldn't see the pitch coming. He'd played that night, caught all 9, thrown out a runner, gone 1 for 3, and squatted through a 6-pitcher bullpen night on knees that were currently filing a formal grievance. He should have been home, iced horizontal. Instead, he was rehearsing a speech in a vinyl booth, which was a thing he had not done since he was 26 and stupid. The kid walked in at 12:48. "Don't be early," Logan had said, specifically so the kid would be early, because you tested for coachability everywhere, and also, he could admit this in the privacy of a back booth, because some newly installed and frankly embarrassing piece of him had wanted the data point. Wanted to watch Tyler West come through that door with his hair wet from a shower, and his eyes already hunting the room for him, and find him, and light up like a scoreboard before remembering to play it cool. He got all of it. Every frame. The kid slid into the opposite bench smelling like hotel soap, in a hoodie that had seen 4 years of bus rides, and said, "I'm early." "You're early." "You knew I would be." "I had a read." Logan signaled Doreen with 2 fingers. She brought a second coffee without breaking stride or making eye contact, God bless her, into eternity. "Eat something." "You didn't eat after the game." "You never eat after games, which we're also going to talk about, but it's not first on the agenda." "There's an agenda?" "There's always an agenda." Logan wrapped both hands around his mug and looked at him. 24 years old, run-scoring double, the catch of the season so far, beat-up hoodie, sitting across from a teammate he'd been on his knees for 18 hours ago, and somehow vibrating with more nerves now than he had then. Logan had spent the whole day's treatment session, film session and game, arranging this conversation in his head, and he delivered it the way he delivered a mound visit, low, level, no wasted pitches. "Here's what last night was not," he said. "It was not a mistake, so don't make that face. It was not a one-time thing unless you want it to be, in which case it was, full stop, no questions, no weirdness, and I'll still throw early BP for you every day, because the swing matters either way." He watched the kid's face do several things at once and pressed on. "And it was not, this part's important, a thing that gets to live in that building. So, rules." "Rules," Ty said, leaning in. "Leaning. Always leaning. 1. Nothing happens in the clubhouse. A beat? Again. You started. I'm aware of what I started and where, and I'm telling you the man who started it was wrong to start it there, and he's the one making the rules anyway, because that's how seniority works." Doreen deposited toast between them. Logan slid the plate to Ty's side. "If anything in that building so much as flickers, a look that lasts too long, a hand anywhere a hand doesn't go, it stops. All of it. I've watched clubhouses turn on less, and I've got 1 ring to chase and you've got 15 years of career, and neither of us is feeding that to the group chat. Clear?" "Clear." 2. The field is the field. When I talk to you at the park, it's catcher to center fielder, and you take it that way. If I tell you your route was bad, your route was bad, it's not code, it's not a mood, it's not about anything but the route. You don't go 0 for 4 and come looking at me like I took something away from you." Logan held his eyes. This was the load-bearing rule, and he needed it to land. Your head stays in the game. The day this thing costs you an at-bat, 1 at-bat, it's over. I mean that. I'd rather watch you make an all-star team from across a clubhouse for 10 years than be the reason you're back in Lehigh. The kid absorbed that, jaw working. "And 3? 3. Logan turned his mug a quarter turn. This was the part he'd rehearsed most and trusted least, and he delivered it anyway, because he'd watched the wiring work for a week and a half, and he was a man who used the tools that worked. You played tonight like a guy whose head was quiet. First time since you got here. You want to tell me why?" Ty looked at the toast. The flush came up his neck in real time. "You know why." "Say it anyway." Because he laughed helpless, scrubbed a hand through his hair. Because I wasn't playing for the whole ledger anymore. I was playing for one guy. One nod. And it turns out that's small enough to actually hit for. The whole ledger. The kid handed over phrases like that, without knowing what he was handing over. Logan filed it with the rest of the dossier, the father's texts, the not eating, the flinch, and made his offer. Then we make it structure, he said. Good games get rewarded. You bring me a good at-bat, a good read, a good process, not stats. I don't care about stats. Slumps happen to gods in this sport, and I'll make it worth your while in detail somewhere with a locking door. You bring me 4 sloppy at-bats where your jaw's clenched and you're fishing for verdicts, and you get film review and a handshake. He paused. It's a system. It keeps your head pointed at the process, it keeps this thing fenced off the field, and it means when I've got my hands on you, you'll know exactly what it's for. You earned it. Nobody can take that crooked feeling and use it on you, because it'll be true. He watched it land. Watched the kid's breathing change across a diner table at 1 a.m, pupils going wide over a cooling coffee, and felt the old dangerous satisfaction of a perfectly called pitch, and underneath it, quieter, the thing he was not examining tonight, that he'd just built a fence with a gate in it, and given himself the only key and called it discipline. That's Ty's voice came out rough. He cleared it. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Negotiations are open. You get one ask. Make it good. And the kid surprised him. The kid kept surprising him. That was becoming the whole problem, by not asking for more or sooner, or anything off the menu Logan had braced for. He looked up with those brown eyes dead level and said, Don't call me kid. When we're that. I've been kid to every coach who ever graded me. I don't want to be graded. I want, he stopped, reddened, finished it anyway, chin up, brave as a 3-0 swing, you know what I want to be called. Doreen refilled the coffees. The jukebox hummed something from before either of them was born. Logan Price looked across the booth at the corresponding move, the project, the best first step he'd seen in 11 center fielders, and felt something in his chest shift its weight off the bad knee, so to speak, settle into a stance he hadn't taken in years. Deal, he said. Eat your toast. Ty ate the toast. All of it, grinning the whole time like the toast had won a pennant, and Logan watched him do it and ran the cost-benefit one last time. The age math, the clock in his knees, the kid catcher hitting .330 in AA, every reason this was a bad pitch to swing at, and then deliberately, the way he did everything, put the analysis in a drawer and shut it. Ty. The next night Ty went 2 for 4 with a walk, a stolen base, and a root in the gap so clean the broadcast ran it back twice. Decker caught him at his stall after, towel around his neck, smile filed sharp. Look at you. 2 whole games. Hey, what's Price's deal anyway? He adopting you or what? Whole leagues noticed. Veteran spends that kind of time on a guy, usually means the front office asked him to babysit. A wink. No offense. None taken, Ty said, pulling on his hoodie. Some of us just ask good questions. Cute, Decker's smile stayed, his eyes didn't. Enjoy the tutoring while it lasts, Rook. Old catchers fall for a new project every year. They always find a newer one. Ty kept his face professional, he was getting good at professional, and didn't answer, and was still deciding whether to let it itch when his phone buzzed in his pocket. One line. No name needed, he'd saved the contact as 9 the position, nothing anyone could read over his shoulder. Good process tonight. Room 412. Ty looked at it for 3 full seconds, heart slamming, the clubhouse noise gone to static around him. Then he grabbed his bag and went to collect.
Ty is standing in a clubhouse with his phone in his hand. The contact is saved as 9. Just the position number, nothing anyone can read over his shoulder. The text says, Good process tonight. Room 412. His heart is slamming. The noise is static. He grabs his bag and walks out to collect. And that's where we leave him. Bench Me, Praise Me by Chase Power. The full novel is available now. Link in the description. And if you make it to the end, there's a bonus chapter called Spring Training, Room 412. Too hot for Amazon, free on the site, and it will ruin you. That link's in the description too. Thanks for listening. See you next episode.